Welcome to Astrology Hub TV, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Pua Walsh, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Astrology Hub. And Astrology Hub TV is a weekly show dedicated to helping you explore your connection to the cosmos and how this connection can actually help you live a more empowered, fulfilling, and vibrant life. We're here live every Thursday at 4 Pacific and 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern. And if you'd like to receive a Facebook message when we're live so you don't miss an episode, you can sign up now for live alerts. We're going to put the link in the chat so you can sign up for live alerts, and you will be alerted via Facebook Messenger anytime that we're live. All right. So today we are talking with Today we are talking astrology and ascension with self-mastery coach, international teacher, motivational speaker, bioenergetics therapist, author, and healer, Ron Baker. I have to add to that list, friend and beloved co-worker on another level as well.
I love it.
I love it. Ron, it's so great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. And today, Ron's going to be talking with us about how the shifting process that our planet is going through is heralding an unprecedented shift of evolution and ascension for us, and what this means for your spiritual growth and transformation. He's also going to talk about how this evolution process may be bringing up situations or events in your life that are challenging and how to manage this process most effectively. Then we're going to talk about how to work with the shifting energies of Saturn moving into Capricorn and Jupiter moving into Scorpio. So Saturn in Capricorn, that shift happens December 19th and is going to be with us for the next 3 years up through 2020. It's a huge event for all of us, both collectively and personally. So I'm also going to be telling you later about a free gift that Astrology Hub has put together to help you understand how Saturn in Capricorn is going to affect you based on your astrological sign. And then we're going to end with some practices that you can use to embody or work with the energies that Ron and I are going to discuss today. So this episode is for you if you are someone who wants to understand what's happening in the world today and why it's changing so much. If you're someone who wants to take life to the next level, and if you're someone who wants to understand simple ways that astrology applies to you and your personal life. All right. Sound good, everybody? Sound good, Ron?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Good. Okay. So before we get started, I just want to take a moment to get us all centered and grounded and ready for the wisdom that you're going to share with us today. So if you're in a position where you can close your eyes, I invite you to do so for just a moment. And just begin to tune into your breath. Feeling the inflow and the outflow. And taking a moment to just allow yourself to be present and here. I know we're so busy and we're leading very busy lives, but you're here now. So just take a moment to commit to being here and to let go of anything that happened before and anything that you need to do going forward, and just be here, present, and receptive to the wisdom and the guidance that Ron has to share with us today. Just a few more breaths, just paying attention to the inflow and the outflow. And I'd love for us to take one deep breath together, just to connect with the amazingness that we are a global community. So there's people from all over the world tuning in right now. And even though we're far apart geographically, we're always connected by our breath. So let's breathe together. Just go ahead and exhale. And then breathe in really, really deep. Taking a moment to pause. And exhale your breath as Ron likes to do, with your mouth open. And again, marveling at the interconnectedness of all of us through this divine breath. And when you're ready, just go ahead and gently open your eyes. And I am going to introduce Ron more officially. So for the last 27 years, Ron has been invested in teaching a unique process of self-empowerment that has made a consistent, enhancing difference in the lives of thousands of people around the world. The hub of Ron's work takes place at his metaphysical school in New York City, which he created in the 1990s. The foundation of his transformational work teaches people how to create the 9 nurturing experiences that we all seek more than any other thing. As people learn to clear their wounds of fear, shame, and judgment, replaced with these 9 nurturing experiences, they're able to transcend the habitual limits of survival consciousness, moving into empowered consciousness and preparing for the ultimate goal of integrated soul consciousness. And Ron was one of our featured guests at the Global Eclipse Meditation series that we did last summer. And he was so well received by our audience, and everyone just received so much from the transmission that you did that day, Ron, that I knew I just had to bring you back as many times as possible. And so I'm so happy that you're here with us today. Thank you so much. Okay, how many of you out there are familiar with Ron's work already? Maybe you tuned into the Global Eclipse Meditation. Maybe you're joining us from his audience. Would love to hear if you are familiar with Ron's work already. You can just go ahead and type yes in the chat, and I'll check those out later. Woo, tongue-tied. It's Mercury retrograde is coming, huh? Okay, so today we're talking ascension, planetary shifts, and transformation. So Ron, let's dive in. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. So before we do get into the meat of this, can you explain what you mean by ascension? There is a lot of confusion around that term. I remember when I first started hearing it, it was like, what does that mean? Like, we're going to ascend off the planet and we're going to leave? Like, what does ascension actually mean? Can you start with what you mean by ascension?
What I mean by ascension is simply raising consciousness to a higher level. Let's make it quite simple. When you're in first grade, you look at life from one level of consciousness. By the time you reach fifth grade, you see things differently. You see them more fully, more completely. And then it continues on and on. Well, the model that I shared in our talk during the eclipse season, which I believe if people become members of your yearly moon series, they can still access on your site.
Yes, they would.
The model that I shared was that there are 3 primary levels of consciousness that all of us contain. And the first central level is what I call child consciousness. And then we have adult consciousness. And then we have soul consciousness. Well, we don't just naturally move from one to the other. Why? Because we're here to be in a school. We're here to learn, both through our challenges, facing those challenges, deepening ourselves by facing those challenges. It doesn't have to be something horrible. Just taking your first steps was a challenge. Moving to first grade and learning how to navigate that was a challenge. But by facing our challenges, we deepen ourselves. The problem is we've lived on a planet that has very little education about self. And so we're facing outer challenges and we learn all kinds of skills and we work through the learning curve of that. But most people, in my experience, have not learned to view self as a process of facing the inner challenges that allow us to awaken and deepen that inner self. So just because we have these 3 levels of potential doesn't mean that most people even move beyond child consciousness. And that is a huge thing to make clear before we do all the other stuff. Ultimately, ascension would be any move into greater consciousness. Why do we get trapped in child consciousness? At the beginnings of our lives, when we are intended to be guided into every step and discovery of self, our physical self, our emotional self, our mental self, we are intended to be nurtured. I'm going to name some of those experiences that we seek. We seek safety, connection, affection, acknowledgement, acceptance, compassion, guidance, support, and encouragement. We seek those 9 experiences right from the beginning. And if we had conscious parents who had gotten this when they were young, we would naturally have moved inward and learned to trust I matter, I am valued, I'm an individual who matters. And of course I'm nurtured in the world. Of course the world's a nurturing place. Well, all of us know That is nice as it is to understand now in hindsight that these are the things we need. I've never met one single person who got all those things. So what happens when we don't get that nurturing is we end up with fear, shame, and judgment held in that first level. And so we become defended and we go into a protection racket. And so even though we grow into adult bodies, our consciousness is still very much guided by the survival programming. And so we get stuck in survival consciousness, even if we're living very successful structures in our lives. So that's a beginning introduction, raising consciousness, and how to do that and how to work through the challenges is the opportunity.
Fantastic. Okay. So I love that you incorporate astrological tides and currents and what's happening into your work as a self-mastery coach. So can you tell us how you do that? You know, how you actually bring astrology into your work?
Absolutely. I think it is so important to understand two main things: self and life. Life operates through cycles. Well, just like going through first grade again, that is a cycle. It lasts this long. But within elementary school, you have a bigger cycle. And then you have middle school and high school, and that equals a cycle. So all of life operates through small cycles and bigger and bigger and bigger cycles. If we learn at each level and we focus on the curriculum of each level, then we are naturally prepared to move into more of our greatness. And so how I integrate this into my work, I want people to understand that all of life moves through cycles. So let's take it again from simple cycles, day and night. The earth moves one cycle, like first grade being a small cycle. And then we have bigger cycles of other planets that are moving with us around the sun. I'm going to go ahead and name the sun again as the heart chakra of our solar system. We have 7 energy centers in our bodies. We have 7 planetary energy centers, and we have the same things reflected as far outward as we will go. So this movement of energy goes through cycles. So if we consider, as an example, that Saturn takes 29 years to move around all the signs of the zodiac. That's one cycle. Well, that's a way bigger cycle than just a day or a year or a decade you get the point. Everything moves in cycles. And if we learn how to flow with the rhythm of those cycles and take advantage of the opportunities to look at my physical self, my emotional self, my mental self, my sexual self, my spiritual self, then we cycle through all the parts and develop all the parts of self. So when big events happen, such as this move of Saturn into Capricorn, its home sign, where it regrounds and reevaluates the last 29 years and all that each of us has learned, as well as the collective has learned, then it becomes a powerful shift of focus, particularly like every time it changes signs is a powerful move because it's one of the big impactful planets. So anytime one of these big events takes place, I like to point out to my clients, this is happening. It may be bringing up a ton. For instance, Jupiter just moved into Scorpio. That's the other big movement that's happening right now. What is Scorpio? It is the depth of self. It is moving into the subconscious. It is moving into where we hold all those challenges I was just referring to. And so if you know that the initiation planet, Jupiter, has just moved in where it's going to be unearthing and purposefully revealing the next levels of challenge. And Capricorn is about we'll call it the wise teacher planet. It operates up here in the higher self. It is the seer. and it looks at all of life trying to teach us how to move to next levels. Well, it's moving back to reevaluate right at the same time that Jupiter is bringing up whatever challenges we need to face next. So I like to help people understand there are real reasons that these challenges are coming up, and you're connected to life and it's impacting. And if you realize it's as simple as, well, of course, I'm going to go to this next grade and I'm going to face these challenges. It's not there to kick my butt. It's there to help me discover and deepen. And if we have a nurturing approach to life, then we're ready to move into more. So here's some thoughts.
That's great, Ron. How do people usually receive that framing? You know, especially people that aren't as familiar with astrology. Is it usually, do they find it helpful, or how's the response usually?
Well, what I think is so great is that no matter what angle you come from, it's going to appeal to some people at one point or one stage of their life. And I remember hearing about some astrology stuff decades ago, quite honestly, and it didn't touch me and move me. I wasn't ready for that. I was working on myself in a big way, but I reached a point where it was like, all of a sudden, like reaching whatever grade, now you're interested in that. And it started to enhance my life. So I just share it as another way to enhance the nurturing transformations that we're working to create. And if it happens to touch people, it typically does. It makes them feel grateful there's a reason that there are things happening, even if they don't understand houses and signs and planets.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I'm finding more and more opportunities to talk with people about astrology.
Yep.
I mean, I was, where was I? It seems like everywhere I go now, and this wasn't the same a few years ago, but people are interested and they're asking questions. And it seems like more and more people are definitely graduating to that level of school, if that makes any sense.
It does. And let me throw out the movement from child consciousness to adult consciousness to soul consciousness. That doesn't just arbitrarily happen. What causes that? Child consciousness, we move a certain amount of energy through the body. When we are preparing to move to the next level, something called Kundalini energy, it's the sexual creative force of life. Kundalini energy begins to move from the base of the spine, moving up in the body, and it's raising the energy. It's raising the vibration and frequency, if you like science. It is raising us, and it awakens our sexual energy. It awakens our desire to connect and merge on more levels, preparing us for the move into adult empowered consciousness. Well, guess what? The same dang energy moves when we typically reach midlife. And midlife is when the energy wants to move us out to soul consciousness. However, if we're still trapped in child consciousness, defending how we think we have to be in order to protect ourselves, this Kundalini energy releases anyway. It is just time for it. So if I'm all trapped and this energy tries to move outward, it's going to slam into the blockages and create more problems. This is why we typically see acceleration of disease or breakdown of the physical body. It's
or like the midlife crisis. Yeah.
Yes. And it becomes crisis. Midlife is not intended to be crisis at all. It's intended to move us into the wisdom of even more of our potential. But that depends on what we've done with the first levels. And so this energy is pushing, and that's what's causing people to seek more. All of a sudden, it's getting our attention, and we go, I've never thought about it, but I really would like more answers. And so, yes, people are asking, people are seeking, and I think it is the most amazing thing. We're in conversations now that did not exist in groups of people just 20, 30 years ago.
Well, yeah. And it's easier for us to find each other now because of technology. So we can So we can actually be having these conversations outside of our little local community that may or may not be open to
Yes,
these
thank
thoughts.
God. And then there are people like you who are creating platforms where you're giving a place for people to gather and get this beautiful information and nurturing encouragement.
Yes, it serves me as well. So
Yes,
hopefully
of
it serves
course.
everybody else too. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk about this. So you want to talk about the shifting process that our planet is going through and how it's heralding an unprecedented shift of evolution and ascension. And then we were going to talk about what this means for people's spiritual growth and transformation.
Yep.
So is this, I mean, would you say, like, just based on what you just said about the Kundalini energy, the creative energy, is that where the planet's at too, in terms of its transformation?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
It is exactly why I wanted to plant some of those initial seeds. I loved the questions that you asked because it gave me an opportunity to plant a few seeds. So let's stick with cycles.
Yep.
Moving energy, attempts to move into more. Well, why in the world has the planet shifted and evolved and grown more in the last 30 years than in the last 3,000 years? Really take a moment to take that in, because we tend to just take everything for granted. Everything's a soundbite now. Really take that in. 30 years. We have gone in consciousness, technology, opportunity, breakthroughs in science and medicine, conversation, awareness, the Hubble telescope, all of a sudden discovering there's so much more. Why is that happening? Well, I purposefully pointed out the Kundalini happening to bring us to the next level of consciousness. Well, guess what? Rather than puberty, the planet is now being prepared and amped up for midlife expansion. However, we just said, if you don't work on your stuff, it's going to slam into the protection defense. And so, which way will it go for people? That's up to each one of us. Either way, we're going to learn lessons. It's going to show us what works or what doesn't work very well. But the planet has reached midlife. Now, I'd like to tie it quickly into this movement of Capricorn movement of Saturn into Capricorn. I said that takes 29 years. Well, guess what was happening 29 years ago? Didn't I just arbitrarily throw out in 30 years? That's the 30-year mark. It's actually 29 and a half years, if we want to be accurate, for Saturn. So let's just stick with 30. But what was happening 30 years ago? Some of you listening may be old enough to remember something called the harmonic convergence. 1987. I'm an old guy, so it seems like an easy thing to remember for me. That is when Kundalini was preparing to start accelerating on the planet. And yet, everybody collectively was in such a wounded survival place, and all of the choices of the 20th century with atomic bombs and so many accelerated defensive focuses had accelerated an imbalance on the planet, shifting the tectonic plates of the planet, so many things in crisis mode. So energetically, from 1987 to 1992, there was a veil of energy that surrounded the planet that separated the consciousness of all of us from impacting the planet herself as deeply. And this was a time when the Kundalini amped up and began to inspire all of this awakening conversation. It created symptoms. We had flu-like symptoms. We started hearing about epidemic flus, a ton. what actually caused a lot of those symptoms was the movement of all this kundalini in the body, and the endocrine gland system of the body could only handle so much, and it created flu-like symptoms, but it also created awakenings. Go back and look at a lot of your favorite authors and speakers and thought leaders. I guarantee you tons of them had awakenings between 87 and 92. I certainly did. It's when my journey went to a quantum level compared to ever before. That is when Saturn was in Capricorn the last time. And it has done this 30 years of expansion. I mean, it's overwhelming, exciting, and challenging. So this, I can't even remember exactly the question you asked me to start that, but that is the first movement I want to, it was about planetary shifts. That's the first movement that is so relevant to where we are right now and the impact and the possibility. So that's just one layer. So you get me back on a track.
Well, no, I mean, this is great. I think I was just on a call with Donna Woodwell, astrologer Donna Woodwell, and she was talking about how 30 years ago when Saturn went into Capricorn, the entire world changed. The Iron Curtain fell. There was, massive upheaval and changes happening on the planet. And it definitely has set a new precedent. One of the things that keeps running around in my head is Maurice Fernandez on our forecast last year. So the 2017 forecast event, he said that the foundations that we're laying when Saturn goes into Capricorn, the foundations that we're laying have to be done in integrity. They have to be done in complete alignment, because when the Saturn and Capricorn cycle is over in 2020, if we have built structures and systems and things on faulty, shaky ground, that they're not going to be sustainable. So I'm wondering how that sort of ripples out into the collective. So right now it's obviously Saturn and Capricorn is going to be a big shift for us collectively, individually and collectively. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me, based on that wisdom from Maurice and based on what you're saying and based on what happened 30 years ago, that if we don't put systems and go in a direction that is in integrity with a greater purpose, greater vision, greater cause, whatever it is, that it's actually going to backfire in 3 years time. I don't know. What do you think about all that? That's all just sort of rattling around in me as you're talking.
I love to explore in every way. So I will share a little bit about that. And what first occurs to me is that if you consider what I've just said about moving to the next level is energy amping up, let's just make it that when you're a child, you're a 25-watt bulb. And when you move to adult consciousness, you're a 100-watt bulb. And when you move to soul consciousness, you're a 250-watt bulb, just arbitrary numbers. Well, what can sustain this level of movement, if it's got some shaky areas, doesn't do so well when you amp the energy up and it's tons more water coming down the river or moving through the body. So at this time of reevaluation, we need to face each of our challenges one by one by one by one, so that we prepare all facets of self to be able to handle the greater levels of energy. And if we don't, let's just look at it in a personal way, and then we'll look at what's happening in the world. Tons of people are having greater personal challenges, just physical challenges alone. The numbers of people having manifestations of disease is just the energy slamming into blockages and accelerating. And people so need the education about how to clear the blockages, how to nurture and release the habitual defense so that we can move into becoming a much brighter light bulb. so that we can have that much more pleasure, that much more intimacy, meaning and value and purpose. So yes, we can't sustain greater levels of energy moving. I'm going to give you another personal example. It's a tender one. So anyone who's listening that this applies to, please know that it's not a good, bad, right, or wrong. It's an encouragement to get emotional education. All of this energy moving, I'm going to stand for a second, moving up in the body, passes the emotional body here, wants to move it up to the heart to be felt and then released here in the throat chakra. This is how I feel. This is who I am. To release that energy. Well, we live on a primitive planet stuck in child consciousness or survival consciousness in a big way, emotionally. And if we haven't learned how to connect to our feelings, nurture our feelings, understand that every feeling is there as a messenger to teach us something, to get our attention, to get us to respond to whatever we need, to how to have a meaningful experience. It's profound when you learn how to connect. But we live in a world that's had this Kundalini amping up, and it's been pushing the feelings up, and people are feeling anxious, panicked, afraid, and in resistance. And this is why, and this is the tender part, it's why tons of people on the planet have felt the need to get on antidepressants. Now, I am not here to make antidepressants bad and wrong at all. But what I am suggesting is that if you find that you need that to create a little bit of stability, you still need to get the emotional education that will allow you to heal it at a source level. Because if it's like if I just numb something out, but I've cut myself below the numb out point, I'm still going to be bleeding or abscessing. So it's vital that we have the tools to create the personal transformation with the accelerations that are happening. So back to the world, it's always so much information. And if I go on too much, just tell me.
No, it's good.
We look at the world and we go, what in the heck, just in the United States alone, what is happening to the government, to the systems, to all kinds of revelations of people's wounded stuff, acting out on one another, mass shootings. I mean, what it's happening is it's accelerating because the energy is pushing against everybody's defense systems. And if we seek nurturing information and learning how to empty the pressure cooker of the emotional body, and it can become the most profound, meaningful experience. Well, if we don't, it causes us to be reactive, fearful, go into further egocentric behavior, not moving out into deeper value. So we're going to see acceleration of bigger wound and challenge, and we're going to see acceleration of those who are doing the work becoming more solid, clear, empowered, valuing leaders in your own life, in your own communities, in the world. But every one of us is needed. We need to come together and everybody take responsibility for their part. Learn to nurture and value self and learn to come together to create these healing transformations so that the wounded who are acting out in bigger ways, all of us to some degree, but who are acting out of fear, shame, and judgment can not become the main story, and that we can develop compassion for one another and help one another to move more towards center. So the systems that are on faulty ground, whether it's the economic system, the social systems, the governmental systems that could handle being a certain level watt bulb, that aren't able to move to greater solutions yet, need us to show up, do the inner work, and take our places in the world to inspire, even if it's just, this is what's important to me. This is what I stand for. This is what I'm willing to support. And this is what I'm not willing to support. Just being clear will shift the resonance toward greater flow, mutual value, group consciousness. All of these are becoming the focuses as we move into more expanded consciousness. So I hope that that's specific and big picture.
Very, very good. Very good. And a lot of people in our audience agree. Kalenica says, so very true. Ron, seriously, also valid and also pertinent to each other. It's so true. So, okay, we spent some good time on Saturn and Capricorn, and there's a lot more coming on that, you guys. This is a big deal. And so Astrology Hub is going to be featuring it in a lot of different ways, lots of really cool opportunities for you, because it's so important that we create these foundations now that are solid. And in Hawaii, it would be pa'a. Is it pa'a? Is it solid? So we need, to be creating those. And so we're going to be putting a lot of information out about what this means for you, Saturn and Capricorn, what it means for you. Our first gift around this topic of Saturn and Capricorn is a download. The link is going to be in the chat and also above this video. And it's your guide to success during Saturn and Capricorn. And it gives you working assignments and opportunities by sign. So your sun, your rising, and what are the assignments for you personally based on where your sun and your rising are in your chart for Saturn and Capricorn. So I loved looking at it. For me, it's my project is myself. It's like project manage yourself. But for some of you, it might be your body or your home or your career or your expression. So check that out. It's free. It's a download. It's in the chat and it's also above this video. Okay, so we did cover Saturn and Capricorn pretty well so far. Let's go to Jupiter and Scorpio, because that's the other one that we wanted to cover about the shifting planetary energies and what this means for people.
So there's so many contexts that I would love to share. When we move from one level to another, whether it's first grade to second grade, whether it's a bigger cycle to a next bigger cycle, we move through 7 distinct stages. We have to literally move those changes from the base of the spine up through each of the chakras in order to become integrated and prepared to be a second grader. So what does that equal? The introduction of a new idea is the birth of the idea. Then we move into what is in the system I teach referred to as the baptism initiation, where you literally have to clear out the limits of the old that don't serve the bigger idea. Oh, I don't necessarily have, I have to let go of using those tools to get more advanced tools. I have to let go of this misunderstanding that was limited in order to embrace a bigger truth. So we go through the purification or letting go of the old. Then we move up to understand and develop a mental awareness. And this brings us to the ahas of the new idea. Oh, it's like halfway through the course of school, you go, oh, I finally get it. I did not understand this course at the beginning. I was taking in the pieces. I was working through. Oh, it makes sense to me now. Now I have to integrate the new into my life. So now we move it up from the aha of the heart to I'm going to commit to the choices that will solidify this new thing. And we go through it here. Then we move up to another purification and then an integration. And now I'm ready to be a second grader. And so we move through 7 stages of initiation. Well, guess what Jupiter is? It is the planet of initiation. It is the expander. It wants to awaken each of those levels. And it is literally 100 times bigger than planet Earth. I mean, can you imagine? This is a cup. Now just imagine twice as big as this cup. It's already this big. And you keep 100 times bigger than planet Earth. So its impact as the expander, as the biggest planet in the solar system, initiates, encourages, accelerates whatever it's focused on. It is now moving into, or it just moved into, I believe in October, into Scorpio. Scorpio is the deep, emotional, passionate energy. Well, guess what? The emotional body, the second energy center down here at the navel region, is what has to move to a next level to prepare for soul experience. And so it's in the subconscious, like Scorpio. It's below the solar plexus. This is the conscious mind. Everything below here is that area where we've squashed all the challenged feelings and limited beliefs. Well, Jupiter is now accelerating and moving that energy of the emotional body based in Scorpio and the passion. It's bringing it up in order for us to nurture it. Now, I want to go back the 29-year cycle that we moved through since 1987 that has created more movement, expansion, healing, opportunity than in 3,000 years. Where does Jupiter fall in that? In 1994, an event happened in the heavens that is as big as any that has taken place in our lifetimes for sure. 22 fragments of what became known as the Shoemaker-Levy comet slammed into the planet Jupiter at 180 miles per second. 180 miles per second. Just, I hope I'm getting all those numbers correct. Somehow I wanted to say it's way faster than that. I thought, anyway, it doesn't matter. What matters is it slammed into Jupiter at profound levels. This hit the initiation planet of our solar system and created an explosion that created craters in Jupiter as big as planet Earth. That's how profound. Scientists knew this was the trajectory, and they already had a satellite up in the heavens, in the skies, I don't know a better word for it, exploring some of the outer planets. And this Galileo had on it plutonium. Why? Scientists know how toxic this goddess element is, and they wanted to see about the breakdown of plutonium so they could hopefully learn a great deal. And so plutonium on this satellite was sent at that time to be a part of the event of the Shoemaker-Levy comet. So you have the male energy of Jupiter exploding with the goddess feminine element of plutonium, and this created a cosmic orgasm that raised energy in unprecedented ways. And this energy coming to the sun, being absorbed in the sun, began to radiate out. Well, what in the world is that energy for? What is the point? The birth into soul consciousness. Also, another metaphysical piece of information is that one of the moons of Jupiter, called Io, is where the ascended mastery codes or the divine plan. It's so interesting. I don't usually talk on all these grand terms. I'm usually talking about how you feel and how to nurture it, but I love this. So the moon of Jupiter holding the codes of the ascended mastery was also released into the solar system to prepare for us expanding into those codes of energy at this time. So all of that to say, Jupiter played a huge role in the planet being nurtured, immersed in the energy of this higher energy, cosmic orgasm of soul consciousness potential. And it caused the planet's vibration frequency to go up and up and up, preparing and amping up, working with the Kundalini, for us to move into this bigger energy. Now let's bring it down to a really practical, personal level, because that's a lot to take in. Just let the seed be planted. So how does this impact you and me? We need to learn to deal with whatever we have buried in the subconscious. We often call this the shadow self. It has our greatness, light shadow, and our wounding, dark shadow. Anything that we haven't integrated yet is in this subconscious self. And Jupiter in Scorpio is now encouraging all of that up. And if we gain tools to nurture and own these next levels of challenge, it will become another quantum shift like the last 30 years that we have witnessed on the planet, even greater. And so the combination of Saturn evaluating where we are, what we're ready to face, and encouraging the healing of that is going to either be this for individuals and collective, or it's going to be boom, 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 boom. And we're going to see both.
Right. Well, even individually, we may see this and then this and then this and then this.
Yes.
I mean, the good thing for all of us on this call is we're tuned in to what's happening. So we can actually work with it consciously. I'm hoping that the practice that you give us here in just a minute can be focused on that, you know, how we can actually work with these energies and maybe even working through the blocks that are like bound to come up. I mean, none of us are completely healed of every wound that we've ever had.
Oh my goodness, no.
It's going to come up. Yeah.
It's not intended to be that. That's not even the goal. The goal is to be in whatever grade we're in and face and nurture that level. And that is the perfection of your individual soul journey, no matter where you are.
Right.
You're not more lovable out here than you are here. Were you more lovable in 5th grade than you were in 1st grade? No. You need to embrace whatever level this is impacting you on, and that's your perfect place in the divine plan. That's such an important thing to know.
So good, Ron. Wow. Yeah. I don't know how it's remotely possible that 48 minutes have passed. Like, it's seriously, it's unbelievable how time flies when we talk, Ron.
I know.
Okay, so I think we should go to the practice because Darlene asked, what do you suggest to emotionally educate myself? Can you address this one first? Because,
yes, I will.
Because you did bring up the topic of the antidepressants and things. So if there are people who are using those right now to, like you said, stabilize themselves, but they also need to be emotionally educating so that they don't need to be on them for the rest of their lives. Ideally, that would be the case, right?
Yes. Once you heal something, it's like if I have a headache and I take aspirin. Well, I don't need to keep taking aspirin if I'm healing the source level. But if I just count on the aspirin, the energy that's blocked in my head is going to keep coming back, and I'll become just dependent on aspirin or whatever I would take. So if you use whatever tools you have, even medications, then go ahead and learn how to move the energy. If I have it in my head, just literally massaging and helping the energy to move can release a headache. I do it all the time with my clients. But let's move to the emotional body because of the beautiful question that was shared. The simplest way that I know of to help someone become aware of where they happen to be today, because you need to know your starting place in order to have any clue if you really need to go to the next levels. So I ask you, take a moment right now, wherever you are, and just ask yourself, can I name 5 feelings that are going on in me right now in this moment? I'm going to take a couple of minutes or seconds of silence for you to see if you can name 5 feelings that are going on for you out loud.
Actually, in the chat. Why don't you type it in?
Yeah, type it in. Now, let me say, just for not too much time to pass in that silence, I have taught thousands of people one-on-one as well as in groups. I've never met a single person who just had such an education and awareness of emotional vocabulary. Most people would be more aware of their feelings if they even had emotional vocabulary. If you happen to, great. But just to name, I'm going to give you an example. Right now, in this moment, I feel connected, grateful, open, seen, courageous, compassionate, loving. Now, I'm calling out positive feelings because that happens to be what I'm feeling at this moment. But let me just tune into what went down when my website went down recently. I felt frustrated, impatient, irritated, pissed off. Do I seem threatened with positive or negative feelings? Is any of them threatening to me? No. So just being able to identify the feelings that are going on in you. You don't have to do it as quickly as I just called it out. That is irrelevant. Just naming any one feeling that you have and then taking a breath to own it, nurture it. So literally, I would teach my people to go, right now I feel connected. Let me immerse myself into the pool of that feeling. Let me show my nervous system I am safe to feel that feeling and to admit it out loud. Amanda, I'm feeling connected. Or in the moment with my website, Amanda, I'm feeling so frustrated. Can I admit it out loud? Can I feel it, bring it up to the heart, and then share it or release it? This is a vital process. It's a big part of what I teach, layer by layer by layer by layer. So could you name 5 feelings? Are you aware of emotional vocabulary? And then, do you know how to move energy with your breath proactively so that the energy is not habitually trapped? The solar plexus is a really big gripper. And it is so used to going, no, I know I'm not safe to feel or reveal that, just because it became conditioned in the early years of our lives, and the same fear, shame, and judgment around those feelings conditioned us to just automatically bury them. So we have to literally go back and reclaim from a nurturing perspective all the 9 nurturing needs. I have never had a single client in 27 years, not one single client, discover a feeling that was threatening to them when they do it in this particular way and deepen it in the process that I teach. Not one. Feelings are not threatening. Our resistance is threatening because it's the energy trying to move, and then we create friction. That's what creates anxiety, panic, and builds up into bigger problems.
So would you recommend, in terms of a practice, as a great practice for everybody, would you recommend that we do that on a daily basis? And also, I was wondering, you keep talking about the solar plexus going to the heart and then going out here through the throat chakra.
Yes.
I was imagining that it might get a little annoying for the receivers to be receiving everything that's going on with us. Like, I'm frustrated now. I'm depressed now. I'm happy now. Can we journal?
You don't need to tell everybody everything.
Oh, so you just do it yourself.
But for you to admit it out loud in private. So when I'm in private myself, I'm going to breathe first to get the energy moving. I open all that so the whole column can be open and relaxed. And then I'm eventually going to move it to, right now I feel grateful. And then eventually I add other parts to this, but this is the simple beginning place that will release the pressure cooker. And then at the end of that exercise, tune into what I call adult reality, an adult reality check. Okay, I just stretched my habitual comfort zone. I brought a feeling out. I admitted that I felt frustrated. Any threat to me whatsoever? Any threat to my physical well-being? Any lightning hitting me? You get the point. We have so much habitual fear about what others are going to do. Learn to hold the space just for yourself. Could not be more crucial and opportunity for us to learn to do this simple thing so that we can build and prepare for the movement of all these expansive energies that are coming and opening.
Beautiful. Ron, I love how simple and effective, and you are a great translator of really complex. It's not always easy for us to understand this process that's happening from this eagle-eyed perspective, but you just put it in a language that is really, really easy to digest. Yes. And then also this process of how to release the pressure cooker, as you say, I can see that being so valuable. So thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us today. If people want to work with you more, how can they do that?
Several different ways. I just mentioned that my website was crashed. However, in the next 24 hours, I'm thrilled to say that my website will be back up fully. It's already been, it's loading at the moment. So at my website, ronbaker.net, if you go there, it'll be obvious that you can get a free ebook on the 9 nurturing needs. I also have a course there that takes you layer by layer by layer with videos and worksheets and all of that, called Claiming Your Authentic Self. And I'm thrilled that I'm releasing a podcast for the very first time starting this week.
All right.
That will be out in the next few days. And that is called Empowered at Last with Ron Baker. It'll be on iTunes, and then the video version will be on YouTube.
Fantastic. And we'll put links to Ron's website and the podcast when it's available up on this episode as well. Ron, thank you so much. Wow. I mean, it just, again, 58 minutes. Are you serious? I feel like we could have gone for several more hours, but
of course,
definitely. Yeah. You'll come back, please. Yeah, there's an open invitation. And then I just wanted to remind everybody that your Saturn and Capricorn download is available. So if you want to know how to work with the Saturn and Capricorn energy for your sign and your rising, you can download that free gift now. It is in the link in the chat and also above this video. We're having so many amazing comments come through, Ron. So hopefully you can spend a little time engaging with people afterwards.
I will. Absolutely. I will. I'll go and answer everything that comes through.
Okay. Very nice. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. It has been such a pleasure to share this space with you. Thank you for making astrology a part of your life. We'll be here next week, same time, same place. So if you want to get an alert when we go live, you can sign up for live alerts. That link is also in the chat and in the description above the video. So you won't miss a session of Astrology Hub TV again. Sign up for live alerts now. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We will see you next week. Aloha.